All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Explore the Bee. We're glad you guys are here. My name is Chelsea, and I work with Building Beats, a nonprofit organization based in New York, providing music and podcasting education to youth in New York City and LA. Explore the Bee is a collaboration with New York Music Month, Extended Play, an initiative of the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. Throughout the New York Music Month Extended Play Initiative, we will be offering free music production and podcasting workshops through May 2021. Be sure to check out the amazing lineups of workshops on our website. I will drop the links in the chat box. I'll do that right now so that you guys could have that. All right. Make sure to check that out. Today's workshop is Find the Bee. During this workshop, you will learn about the functions of drum programming as we explore the functions of step sequencer available in most DAWs. Your teaching artist will be Samuel Lee, aka Sammy on the Beat, a graduate from the Institute of Audio Research. Samuel furthered his education by being involved in internships with Smash Studios and Daddy's House Recording Studio. In 2009, he became a teaching artist for the Thurgood Marshall Academy in Harlem, New York, where he developed a new passion for teaching and eventually led Samuel to join Building Beats. Moving forward in his career, he has earned placements with MTV2, Off the Bat, Girl Code, and Guy Code, and is currently a member of production company RSVP, curators of events, concerts, and artist development. If you have any questions or if you experience any technical issues, feel free to send me a private message. Enjoy the workshop.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you, Chelsea, for that introduction. And thank you all for being here today. We're going to jump right into it, but I just also want to mention that if you do have questions, you can send them to Chelsea in the chat. And we're going to have a section for questions as well around 6:50. Okay. So we will get to all the questions. So, just write them down or just send them over to Chelsea so you don't forget them. So we can get to all those questions at the appropriate time. Let's jump into Find the Beat. Today, I'm going to be using the free cloud based DAW called Soundtrap. It is a staple in the Building Beats community, and it is also available in our toolbox, which I will show you right now. Just share my screen. All right, so this is the Building Beats toolbox. So definitely want to check out this page for all the free DAW based resources, or if you're just feeling like you want to jump at learning music production. There's a couple of great tools in here that we use on the regular, and as you can see, Soundtrap is right here, and that is what I will be showing you today. How to use the sequencer within Soundtrap to create your track with. All right, so as you can see, I'm already logged into Soundtrap. Uh, but before I kind of show you how to add the sequencer and how to dive into it, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of information regarding what a sequencer is. Pretty much for all digital applications like Soundtrap, a sequencer is just an emulation of a drum machine. Back in the day, a lot of hardware was created that simulated simulated these pads and faders and knobs, and this device was used to kind of program drum tracks, sequence drum tracks, and also for sampling as well. So it's a staple in the hip hop community, but a ton of brands out there have created their own version of what a drum machine looks like now and what it has to offer. And a lot of these digital tools that we use today have their own built-in sequencer that we can use and create patterns and really dive into creating our own rhythmic tracks. So Soundtrap has its own built-in sequencer as well. It's called Patterns Beatmaker. So that's what we're going to explore right now. There's two ways to add it to your track inside of Soundtrap. You can go to add new track, and you can go to drum and beats. Or the quick way that I like to do it is in the middle here, there's a button that says Patterns Beat Maker. I normally just click that open and the sequencer just pops up. So let's kind of just explore what we're looking at here for a second. So whenever you load up Patterns Beat Maker inside of Soundtrap, it's going to load you up with three, very basic sounds of the drum kit for you to use. You're going to have a kick, you're going to have a snare, and you're going to have a closed hi-hat. These every kit inside Soundtrap is going to give you a representation of what a drum kit has to offer. And you can also add to these sounds, you can delete them as well. So moving along here, sorry, just computer kind of glitched up right quick. Moving along here, if you click add, you can see that you can add multiple tracks here that you can use on the sequencer as well. So if I just keep on clicking add, you'll notice that more tracks are added. And associated with every drum kit that you see here, if you click on the little arrow associated to the name, a pop-up shows you more options for you to switch the sound out and use any sound within that drum kit of your choosing. So let's just kind of create a basic drum loop here. So for Soundtrap, whenever you're building it out your drums, you can kind of assign where on the timeline you want your drums to go. So let's start on the one, keep it simple. And I'm just going to create a box here just to let Soundtrap know I want to start at this location. Normally I start with the closed hi-hat and I'll just build out a basic rhythm. And once I build out that basic rhythm just by hitting play, that loop will just play for me. So let's focus on the three sounds that they offer us first: kick, snare, and a closed hi-hat. So just by simply plugging in where you want the particular sound to go, the as you play it out, the loop is being created and it's being created in live time to show all of the edits and all of the functions that you're doing on the go as you play the track. So as I play it, I can hear what I like and I can hear what I don't like. And if I want to take anything out, I can simply do that by clicking on any of the sounds that I've plugged in. And another important thing to also focus on too is the fact that at the bottom of here we have our tempo here, right? Starting any track in Soundtrap is going to start you off at 120, kind of as like a basic mid tempo for you to start with. You can change this to whatever tempo you have in mind. Maybe you have a drum rhythm already that you have in mind, and you're able to change this on the go as well. So even though I'm at 120, maybe I want to approach it at a more slower pace. So I'm going to change it to 90, hit confirm, and the entire rhythm and the feel of the track is going to change instantly. And you can really play around with the overall rhythm just by, I like to use the hi-hat to really add more movement to the track. So you could plug in more notes there for the hi-hat and it'll play as such. All right. So just a couple of different techniques you could use when kind of building out the the sequencer and for patterns, beat making, and Soundtrap, right? Most of any DAW that you choose will have its own built-in sequencer. Not all of them look the same, but as far as how they function, it's pretty much straightforward. You're gonna have these grid-like values here that you see here, and you'll notice that I'm starting on bar 1 right here, and bar 2 shows up here as well, and it follows along with the timeline, right? So if I stretch this out, this is my loop bar, this purple bar here at the top. I'm gonna stretch this out, and we're gonna turn this into a 4-bar loop now. So as I play it, you'll notice that the sequencer is following along with what the timeline is doing as well. So there's nothing playing here because I haven't inserted anything. There's a couple of things you can do. If you want this to be a unique pattern, you can simply plug more in on the step sequencer on the next bar value, or you can loop your first pattern like so. So in Soundtrap, if you hover over your loop in the top right corner, a loop icon will pop up and allow you to roll out what you just created. And then as we play it, what's useful about this is that you don't have to program the same rhythm over and over. You can just loop your first bar and you can keep that consistent. Now, if you do want to create a unique variation of what you're doing, what you can do is what I like to do is, normally we like to switch it up on the fourth bar because the fourth bar normally is going to lead into that transition to the next bar, right? And kind of repeat that whole rhythm all over again. So what I do is on the fourth bar, I'll make this bar unique by just sliding over to it and adding in or taking away any of the points that I've added already, sounding something like this. So out of all of the patterns, we can tell that 4 is different. Soundtrap even put like a little split in between it once I started editing it as well. And that happens for any of your patterns. So if you go with looping the entire first pattern you created, if you just plug in one minor edit, it's going to put a split there and have its own unique pattern there for you. It's going to add that in. So I added something to bar 2. All right. So, just a basic pattern. I'm going to actually refresh this and kind of start with something that I actually like. So let's go back to Patterns Beat Maker, start fresh with it, and let's build something out. So I'm going to start with the hi-hat, just roll this out. And I use the loop bar as well, just to kind of hone in on the section of the song I'm working on instead of it, kind of just playing out. And I have to always kind of bring the track back. Use the loop bar to your advantage, to focus in on the part of your track that you're trying to build out at that moment. All right, let's kind of already have the idea in my head, so just build it out. All right, so I have my first 2 bars. Now, another way to kind of build energy on your track when you're working with a sequencer is, you want to start off small. You don't want to introduce too much, maybe a basic pattern. And then what you can do, I'm going to loop just the second bar, keep everything the same for the next 2 bars I added. And now I'm going to work on from bar 3 to 4. But what I'm going to do differently on bar 3 and 4, and also there's a follow beat icon here, I can use this if I wanted to roll with me and kind of follow along with what I'm doing. So on this part, we're just going to speed the hi-hats up just to create more energy. So just by plugging in the hi-hats, let's do it like this. And all right. And let's play it all together just so we can hear how the energy builds over time. So just like that, you can create your own loop and kind of, have more identity with your track, get more of your ideas out than always having to use loops. That's the benefit to using the sequencer, is that you're programming your own thoughts ultimately. So if you do have a beat or a rhythm in mind, definitely test out the sequencer to get going. Now I kind of want to focus on showing you, maybe you don't want to use the first generic kit they give you. Maybe you want to kind of do a little bit more. So what you can do to switch out a sound in Soundtrap is, if you click on the icon here, you'll see that it says Machines Vanilla. That's the name of this drum kit. So if I click on that, you'll open up the preset menu. In the preset menu, you have a ton of other options you can kind of scroll through. If you're using a free Soundtrap account, you can only use the ones labeled free. If you have the premium one, you can use the free and the music makers labeled one. So, just so you have a little context with your account. Uh, if you want to preview a kit before you confirm that you want to use it, simply by clicking on any of the kits, it automatically replaces all of the sounds in the sequencer for you. So when I play it back, so whatever vibe you're feeling, whatever genre of music you're trying to produce, you might have a pattern that you're working with, and it's not really inspiring you. Try changing out the drum kit and seeing what those that drum kit sounds like with a different coat of paint over it, is what I would say. You got to add that feeling to your track. So you want to find the right drums for your track. A lot of producers know you'll spend an hour or two looking for the right kick or the right snare for your track. It's the same concept if you're looking through a entire drum kit for a sequencer. You're gonna wait until you find the one that it feels right to you. So I'm gonna find one. Let's see. I'm gonna use Lucid. I'll use this one. So once I've selected the one I want to use, I just double click it. It's already replaced the sounds, but I can do more with this now. Remember earlier I told you can add more sounds from the drum kit if you want. So by clicking on add, unfortunately, there's no preview button for you to check out what these sounds sound like beforehand. But you can just add them in. So maybe I want to use the ride bell. By selecting it, I'll have to add it in to actually hear what it sounds like. And I didn't hear much. So, which is fine. If a sound isn't creating a sound for you, you can switch it out, find one that works. We'll switch it to a hi-hat pedal. Okay, so we hear that one, and you're just kind of scrolling through to see what works for you. So I'm just gonna add another snare. Actually, gonna add it right there. Take that one out. So just to the snare right now sounds a little weak. So by layering it with another snare, you actually beef the sound up a little bit more. Um, it just adds a little bit more texture to the sound. And let's put one here and something like that. Okay. And we'll add a rim shot. Let's see, you know. So you definitely got to use your ears for this and kind of figure out what rhythms sound good to you. You don't want to just cut, just color stuff in, as I would say. You want to use your ears and make sure things sound right. So take your time. Like that rim shot didn't sound nice at all, so I went and used it. Let's try a mid time or a high time. That doesn't sound what I want, so I think I have what I need. I'll keep it with the extra snare. So every drum kit has its own unique sound to it. Some sounds you'll like, some you won't. You just have to find what works for you first and foremost. All right, cool. So this is my loop so far. This is what I have. Also in Soundtrap, what I like to do instead of having to loop this over and over. The problem with that in Soundtrap is if I loop it, it's only going to loop that unique pattern I made. So the pattern four the pattern four, what I created is the only thing that you saw me looping just now. If I want the entire four patterns I created to loop over, I'm going to have to select all of them. I'm using a PC, so I have to hold the Alt button and I can drag over my pattern like this, and I can keep everything consistent in the track just by doing this. So now we have the exact same patterns playing for the remainder of the next four bars. Now, I don't want the hi-hat rhythm to kind of die down on this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take these two out and I'm only going to copy the last two patterns again, just so we can keep that hi-hat rhythm continuing. Cool. So there's a couple of things that limit you when you're using a sequencer, but I'll show you how you can kind of combat that. So you'll notice on the sequencer, you're just kind of in this box, right? You have these different boxes here that emulate the different measures of music and time that you're seeing associated with the timeline. So if I'm on bar 7 here, bar you'll see the cursor moving to bar 7 as well. Everything is synced, everything is in line. The only problem is if I wanted to do something more, something a little bit more intricate with my pattern, it's a little hard to do that in a sequencer. So one of the functions that you can use is the piano roll. And you might say, piano roll, what does that have to do with drums? But this is a useful tool for you to use in creating more of a human approach to programming your drums. When you use the sequencer, sometimes you can get stuck with a real digital sound. If you bring it to the piano roll, you can add more of that human like behavior to the drums you program. So let's do that for the hi-hat. And unfortunately, you can't see, what's what until you click on it. You don't know what it is. So you'll have to click on it to know that, oh, my kick is here, or my hi-hat is up here and my snare is here. Okay, so these are all the sounds that I've added thus far. One of the great things I can do, like I said, is using the piano roll, I have more movement. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna shift these hi-hat note values here. I'm gonna zoom in. Let me zoom in a little more. Zoomed in a little bit too much. Let's zoom out a bit. All right, right there is good. All right. And okay. Let's try that again. All right. All right. Zoom in is not functioning right for me right now, but I'm just gonna zoom out and show you what it's gonna do. All right. So as you can see, my hi-hat is directly on the grid here. I like to kind of add a little bit of movement to the hi-hat so it's not so stiff. So we're going to take every other hi-hat and just shift it over a little bit. And I feel like I have to zoom out for this because it's just too much to zoom in. So, all right, we'll take this one and by holding shift, I can select the other one. Now, all I'm simply going to do is I'm going to shift it over by turning off at the top here. There's a snap to grid button. I can turn this off and it allows my hi-hat to have a little bit more movement where I put it. It doesn't snap to any grid. It stays exactly, it moves where I want it to move. So I'm just going to move it a little bit like a nudge, like that. Let's see. Let's do the same for these. And unfortunately, I can't select all the patterns at once and do this. But let's see, shift, select, and just shift these over a little bit. Okay. All right, let's just hear what it sounded like. Okay. And we'll shift these. Let's move this over. All right. So holding shift, we just select the ones we want to move over, like so, and adjust. All right. Now I'm not gonna do this for all the other patterns. I'm just simply for these last four, since these are duplicates of the last two patterns, I'm just gonna copy those and drag those over, so I don't have to continuously edit that one function over and over again. As you can see, as I move it, I'm not on the grid anymore. So that makes it harder when you want to copy stuff over. So just always remember to turn your snap to grid back on when you're trying to put things back in place. Just makes life a little easier for you. Okay. So this hi-hat here, we gotta adjust this one. All right. All right. Now another trick that you could do is layering as well. So if we go to add new track, or not even add new track, we'll go back to patterns beat maker and we'll add another hi-hat, but we'll use a different drum kit. And this will just give us a little bit more movement with the track. Like so. And I'll just do one pattern for this. So I don't need to make sure that it crosses out, crosses through all the other patterns. All I need is one pattern and I can loop that just like this. And we'll find a nice pattern for it. Let's go with the old school tape. And we'll go to piano roll. So for this pattern, I'm going to actually add a lot more movement to it. And I like to put the hi-hats in the piano roll because sometimes I want 16th notes, or, I just want to dive in deeper with the hi-hat, and I can't do that in the sequencer. So by doing that, we could do stuff like this. Let's do it over here. So by creating shorter note values, as you see what I'm doing here, I'm just making the hi-hat value a little shorter. So I'm able to add more hi-hats in instead of, having it to be this one big note value. And let's see. And then you kind of just customize it to your liking. Let's put one here. And this same thing for any kit. If I kind of scroll through, you can hear all the different drum sounds that are associated with this kit. Now, another thing that helps you add more movement to your track is to, you want to make it more lifelike. So you don't want all your drums playing at the same velocity. So one of the things that you can do, and on the piano roll on the right, you'll see right now I'm using the mouse icon. That is what you naturally would use to move around stuff. I can even plug in an extra drum sound if I want, just by double clicking, and I can also delete as well. On the right here, there's a velocity button though, and the velocity deals with the volume of that overall sound. Adjusting your hi hats and just rolling them down a bit, you know, creates more of a lifelike approach when it comes to programming your drums, because naturally your hi hats wouldn't play at that same note, that same velocity throughout your track, right? So just by adjusting it slightly, doesn't have to be too low to where it's not heard, but hearing the velocity of the hi hats go from up and down, the volume is really gonna bring the track out a bit more. All right, let's see. All right, and then let's actually just do this. Okay. So one thing to notice too about the sequencer is that I'm working with Midi. So Midi is just a form of communication, right? I'm simply programming in these different note values based off of sounds that have been incorporated inside of Soundtrap. And I'm able to switch out my pattern on a go and how it sounds because it's all Midi, it's not audio. You hear it as audio, but the way I'm programming it is through Midi. And this function allows for a lot of flexibility when you're creating your track, because if you don't like how it sounds, you can come back to it. And if I don't want to use Lucid anymore, I can go to a different kit. Maybe I want to use Love, or maybe I want to use Milky. It's really up to you and how you're feeling on when you're building out your track. But because it's MIDI, it allows us options when we're creating. But ultimately, you want to take it to audio so you can kind of flip it and do some unique things with it. So let's go over how you can kind of bring a little bit more life into your tracks, and I'm going to show you how to do that by flipping it into audio. Yes, that's old school tape. I see you in the chat. Yes, that's old school tape for the hi-hat in the back. So one thing I like to do once I've programmed my pattern in a way that I like to flip it and make it into audio after the fact, right? And this is going to allow for a lot of different results. So let me show you the process of how you can turn your MIDI into audio, and then I'll show you, I'll drop some gems on how you could bring your drums to life a little bit more. So first thing you want to do, I'm gonna turn both of these tracks into audio because right now they're both audio. I mean they're both MIDI. So first track is Milky. I'm gonna click on this button here. There's a button called Track Options. It's these three dots. Click on that. We're gonna go to Export. We're gonna export this as an audio file, and we're gonna do the same for the hi-hat track as well. Now, once you do that, it's gonna download to your device. Once it downloads to your device, you're simply just bringing it back into Soundtrap as an audio file. So I'm just going to drag and drop, and I'm going to mute my MIDI tracks now. I don't need those right now because I have the audio. So when I play it back, sounds the same, sounds exactly how it should. Let's just fix this pattern a bit. Let's make sure everything is 8 bars. And what we're going to do, I'm going to mute the hi-hats real quick. See, without the hi-hats, it just don't have that life that it had, right? So The hi-hat track really brings the energy out. Okay, so I just wanted you guys to see that, you know, once you add that hi-hat in, it just kind of brought all the vibes back in. All right. So now that I've converted this to audio, there's a couple of things I could do to it. One of the things I like to do is I like to sample myself. Like, what does that mean? You know, sampling is just the art of taking something and altering it and flipping it in a way that's different than what it originally sounded like. So for this first track, for the Milky track, we can kind of chop this up and rearrange it if we wanted to. So let's see what we could do. Gonna actually cut it from here. I'm gonna put a slice in. I'm not gonna cut it. So the command to do this is you want to make sure your track is selected, and Soundtrap has this function called split region. The command for it is Control E, so that's what I'll be using. I'm on a PC yet again. Um, Once you select it, make sure your cursor is where you want the split to go. Control E, and bam, I just split the audio. And I'm gonna move it over to bar 2, beat 2. That's what this would be called. And we're gonna put another split right there. So I have a couple of options I could do. Let's zoom in so we can see it better. I can take this audio out, or I can rearrange it and move it around. It's really up to what I decide to do. So let's move it out for a second and let's just hear something. Okay. Just listening back to see what we could do here. Okay. All right. So we'll keep some of this. And what I'll do is I will put a splice there. And we're just going to add a little stutter in the beat. Oh, wrong timing. Let me put that over here, actually. All right. Ultimately, I could have done this in the actual MIDI, but having the ability to do this to audio and chop yourself up, like, I just think it's better if you work with it this way. And we'll do one more flex right here. We'll put something there. So I'll split this part up. We'll have to zoom in so we could do this because you want to make sure you see the edit button. So the edit button has a couple of functions you can do after you turn your MIDI to audio. You have the ability to reverse the audio. So that's what we're going to do on this part. We're going to reverse it and see how that sounds. So, you know, you have your own effects here that you created for yourself just by switching your drums into audio. Let me copy that, bring that over. So let's say this is my loop now. I'll bring the hi-hats back in. Now, another gem that you want to do with your drums once you turn them into audio is Soundtrap has effects that you can add on to beef the sound up and kind of alter it, right? So by clicking on the icon associated with your track, you're going to bring up this menu. If you click on add effect, I think adding distortion to your drums is like key. I'm going to use classic distortion just so you can kind of see what it does to the drums. Add an effect to the hi-hat and just bring them out a little bit more. And then once you have a nice rhythm and you have something going on, you can add in the melody and all the things you want. So everyone a part of this call is getting a free copy of my latest sample pack, Elevated Sounds, which is going to give you drums, melodies, MIDI files. So I'm going to show you a loop from one of my packs that I'm going to add to this track. Hopefully it works. I don't know, but we're going to try it. Um, this is a loop. It's called Moving Shadows. Let's see how it works. So all I did was drag and drop it into into Soundtrap. Drag and drop. And let's see. Hold on, I just thought of something. I want to drop out on the end right here. So let's roll this back and let's see. Let's try that. Ooh, that little dun dun at the end, that did it for me. So we play it. Yeah, that's nice. So, it's a ton of stuff that you guys are gonna get. I got a bunch of other loops in there too. Let's try another one just to see. Oh, whoa, 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 that tempo is wrong. Also, my loops have BPM encoded with them, so you know exactly what the BPM of those loops will be. As you can see, I just dragged in a 125 BPM loop. So let's change that to 125. So we can kind of see what that's gonna sound like. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Hold on. Let me revert back. Whenever you make a mistake, use the undo button. It'll save your life. 125, and let's adjust. And hopefully it does it in time. And come on. Yeah, time stretching. Okay. No, that didn't sound right. Okay. So, yeah, we're having difficulties with that one, but it's all good. We have a good one anyway. And then once you start like manipulating the drums like that and you're sampling yourself ultimately, you know, put in that same those same techniques in with your melody as well and kind of, create some new possibilities for yourself. I can reverse this as well. And if you're an artist, you already got enough to work with to write a song. All you need is two drum loops, a melody to get you going, and you can write that next record. It is 6:50. I did want to leave time for questions. I hope I didn't show too much or, you know, lose anybody along the way. So, okay, good question. So, um, to export an entire project out of Soundtrap, what you want, you need to make sure first that your track is saved. So let me do that. And once it's saved, Soundtrap has its own mixing algorithm, I'll say, to where they master the track for you. And once that's done, you can export the entire track as a MP3, as a wave, whatever you want. As you can see, it might be hard to see on Zoom, but it says mixing right here. It's mixing, so I have to wait until this is done. But Once it's done, if you go to File and you go to Export, you'll see right here it says Export Project to MP3 file or WAV file. And you can just do it like that. Okay.
Nancy has a question. Do the BMPs have to match? Can you do different tempos like 90 and 125 together?
Yes. You can always switch up the BPM. Even if you're working with a loop that is labeled a certain way, you can change it to a different BPM. You'll just have to compensate for that new edit that you created. So like if this is 90 BPM, but if I wanted it at, I don't know, let's try 100 or something. As you can see, it's a little bit of an issue with the timing, right? I'll just have to make the edit around that new BPM. So it's all about time stretching in a sense too, but unfortunately Soundtrap doesn't have a time stretch feature. But if you use like a third party time stretch feature, you can take the loop that's 90 BPM, stretch it to the desired BPM you want, and you can use that. So it's a bit of editing. And oh, another function that I can show you guys before we kind of wrap up is even once you've programmed your track and you've turned it into audio, let's use let me see. So you'll notice I've processed this with effects, right? So the Milky track now has effects. I've cut it up. I've looped it a different way than it originally was. This allows me to do a couple of things. I think I kind of have to roll this back though. Let me see. So if I go back here, I can export this track again. And by exporting it again, I have another version of the same track, but this one will have the effects processed with it now. So if I go back here, I can turn these effects off and it sounds regular. But if I go to the one I processed, oh wow, there is no effects on that one. And a good reason to why that is I did forget that in Soundtrap, you have to export it as a whole track for the effects to be processed with it. So do keep that in mind if you're using Soundtrap. If you want it to process with the effects, make sure you go to File and you export the entire track with the effects on it instead of as an individual audio file. So that's the one thing that you have to be aware of. Yeah. Um, does Soundtrap work with MIDI controllers? It does. Let me actually show you. I actually have my MIDI controller hooked up. I'll show you guys on the camera. If you look here, this is my MIDI controller. And if I add like, let's go back to drums. Hold on. Let me let's actually do a piano instead. Oh, there we go. Okay. So this works alongside with what I'm doing with my MIDI controller, and I can program it, to record and do things as well. Also works for drum performances too. So if you want to have a MIDI controller with drums, you can set it up that way as well. And do I prefer to use sequencers as opposed to a drum pad? Um, I have the Machine Micro and I love it. That's actually the first drum pad piece of hardware that I purchased, and I love it to like lay down quick ideas. But a lot of times using the sequencer is quicker for me, so it really depends on my mood.
Cool. We'll give that a minute. Thank you everybody for joining, and thank you for everybody who is helping out on this call.